Hello, everyone. Welcome to Minds on Mushrooms. I'm your host, Maggie Kirkwood. With me today, I am so honored to have Dr. JJ Purcell with me. She is the author of this lovely book, Psilocybin Therapy, and we're going to be talking all about her credentials, her experience, everything. I just kind of wanted to kick it off by reading this little intro paragraph with you and your book. It says Dr. JJ Purcell is a naturopathic physician, entrepreneur, and advocate. Her career has centered around her work with plant medicine, which began with owning and operating 3 community-focused herb shops. Her exploration of psychedelic therapy led her to complete both MAPS and CIS postgraduate certificates to serve as an active leader in the psychedelic education and facilitation. Today, her professional practice includes an emphasis on community medicine and education, fueled by good tea and world travel. She is a compassionate activist striving to connect communities by encouraging everyone to see the best in others and themselves. Thank you for letting me read that. I just love that.
Thank you.
Hello, JJ. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Maggie. It's a pure joy. I love talking about this, and hopefully it can help whoever's listening. So,
Well, I believe it will. Let's start. If you don't mind, I really like to ask each guest kind of, um, you know, their journey into this space. And I know it can be probably a mouthful, but I'd love to hear any significant events or, what's led you here. And I would also like to touch base on all those credentials that you have so we can understand exactly the work that you do and can offer.
sure. So my like many folks, my exploration into psychedelics was early on in my youth, through exploration and social gatherings and camping in the woods and these kinds of things. Pretty early on, though, I found that when I would take psychedelics, whether it was LSD or mushrooms, I would want to be by myself and really lay still and go deeply inward. And I found that very curious, and my friends would get extremely frustrated. Um, but there was something happening. And for me, in a world that's so chaotic at times, and, being a teenager, young 20s, when your life can just feel chaotic in general, I didn't have a direction and had a lot going on, and I was trying to figure out. Those quiet spaces in my personal psychedelic therapy were very healing, and they allowed for me to remember that I am still connected to a greater community, to self-love for myself, and quieted that tape recorder of beratement or negative thoughts that I'm, wasting time or not where I should be in my life, or so on and so forth. So I found that to be very, very helpful.
So, when you first were dabbling, was there any understanding that this could help with some of those areas that you just spoke about, or was it kind of like a haphazard, I'm gonna try, those were the effects that you just seemingly had?
Yes,
Okay.
I was completely unaware at the time. As
Wow.
maybe some people can be sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can relate. It was just a total haphazard experience for me, and I just remember laughing and feeling so well, and then it wasn't, until later that I started to realize, wow, the full benefits and self-exploration that can be done, so I'm kinda proud of myself and
Oh,
those who are able to see, that way. Um, so you consider yourself a scientist and a spiritualist. Let's talk about some of your work credentials. And I want to hear more of that background.
sure. I always knew that I wanted to be helper. That was like, my drive in life and still is my drive. I love helping people. Some people say I overextend myself, but I'm very good at my own needs and boundaries. I just love to help other people. It's something I enjoy and it's something that really fills me up. So, growing up in the Midwest, what does that look like? It looks like either being a nurse or a doctor, that kind of thing. So I went that normal route, but really was not. Um, uh, I really wasn't satisfied with the Western medical route for my own health.
Okay.
And that was, in my mid 20s, started taking me on this trajectory of natural health and medicine and wellness. And that's when I discovered acupuncture and naturopathic medicine and really felt like this was the right calling for me, which led me to do my 7 year crazy, grueling medical doctorate master
Wow.
program here
Mhm.
in Portland. So, naturopaths have the same medical training as a Western doctor with 300 additional hours
Mm.
in other therapies such
Wow.
as microcurrent or chiropractic or homeopathy or botanical medicine. So it's basically just gives us this giant toolbox to work with. And when one thing doesn't work, we try something else. And it really is a co relationship with patient doctor to solve the mystery, not
Mhm.
just, cover up the symptom. So that was my journey there. And I'm very inquisitive. I love to know how things work. And it's really fascinating and fun when you can find the reason things work or the cause. And that's the science in me that I
Gotcha.
love.
Yeah.
But I am a very spiritual, ceremonial person in my personal life. For
Okay.
me, having intention and being aware of my surroundings and really being present is when I feel my best. So
Gotcha.
I've tried to fuse them as best I can.
I love that. It's a well-rounded, the merging of the Western and ancient practices just seems so smart and safe and feels good. I enjoyed reading about that in the book. One thing that I really appreciate about your writing is I feel like you take such complicated topics and put them into a way that's easily digestible. So I think just for our listeners, I really wanted to touch on kind of like psilocybin and break it down as easily as you can on how it affects our brains and how it essentially works.
Right. Right. So, the real answer to that question is we don't know. um, we have these theories and we've done brain mapping and we've done, all sorts of conclusion drawing through certain tests. But in reality, that could all change,
Sure.
with different techniques as we move through modern times. But the general basis of how psilocybin works is that it in our daily lives and our daily existence, our brain is constantly going.
Mm.
Now, some of that brain on autopilot is doing the physical needs that are demanded to survive, breathing, beating the heart, so on and so forth. But there are other parts of the brain that are constantly processing information, whether it's past, present, or future, experiences, thoughts, feelings, preparationness to react. It's just constantly going.
Sure.
And it takes a pretty heightened sense of awareness to recognize that that is happening. Most of us don't recognize that. We're just going about our day and thinking about what we think we're supposed to think about or need to think about at any given time, but we're not quite aware of this computer running in
Mhm.
the background. So the psilocybin and LSD have this ability to turn off that constant
Mm.
processing, which is called the default mode network. It shuts that down. It quiets it. Well, what happens if you have all of your processes laid out in your brain, which, by the way, they say most are cemented by the age of 12.
Wow.
So let's say you know how you feel about broccoli. You have cemented that since age 12. I know that I love broccoli. Okay. So let's say that we turn off that default mode mechanism, and then all of a sudden a plate of broccoli is put before you. What happens is your brain in that moment gets to decide, do you like broccoli or do you not like broccoli? You have to find a new pathway of neurons, or you're given the opportunity to find a new pathway of neurons to make new and different choices, or to view trauma, addiction, or anything in your life, that belief systems, you are able to look at them by forming new neuronic pathways, which opens the door to perhaps have different thoughts on those things. And that's
Yeah.
the really brilliant part, I think, of psilocybin therapy.
Yes, that was such a beautiful explanation. And I think that it is just so helpful to hear it laid out like that because in essence, I mean, I think that's exactly how I feel about the medicine. So I just, reinforcement around the idea is very helpful. Um, so let's talk a little bit about, something that's I look at microdosing as a practice
Mhm.
that's kind of ever evolving. And quite frankly, I get a little perturbed with the two, microdosing and macrodosing. And for me, it's more of this spectrum and, kind of dialing in on what your goals or, in near future, what's needed, what's not, which affects dosage for me and myself. But with my microdosing practice, something that's relatively new for me is really involving, I guess, the spirituality aspect. So, whereas in the past I was microdosing intentionally, but now I've really tried during my practice to have more mindful experiences, such as meditating and I guess trying to this idea behind collective consciousness and things of that realm. I would love to hear you as someone who, you know, uh, a spiritualist point of view or any sort of conversation around psychedelics and spirituality and maybe anything personal that's been brought up for you. I would love to touch on
Sure. In the macro or the micro or both, or
both.
okay. Sure. Sure. Well, let's start with the micro and then we'll move into the macro.
Perfect. Thank you.
Um, Microdosing for me was it was a new concept. I'd never really, thought about microdosing. This was about 10 years ago, and I'd only, thought about macrodosing. And so the idea of creating a continuity with my sense of presence
Okay.
in any given day was very appealing. So at the time, let's see, I was a single mom, and um, life was extremely chaotic. Trying to, run a retail business and a practice. I
Sure.
mean, all of those things. It was knowing what I needed to do, but never having the time or the space to do it, and feeling like I was missing a lot of moments in my life.
Okay.
Um, so the microdosing for me became a very much intentional practice with the attempt to connect to my day
Okay.
in a very personal way. Because I could remember whole days of my life of just going through and then collapsing in bed and not really remembering anything,
Wow.
you know?
Yeah.
And that was not a way I was wanting to
Sh-
carry out my life.
sure.
So the microdosing in the smallest way created this deeper presence, and I'll never forget um, two things. One was I was really, really rushing before I started microdosing and trying to get my daughter in the car seat and get to work and drop her off at daycare. It's crazy. And I just remember these big blue eyes, as a 3-year old looking at me and just saying, "Mom, I don't want to rush."
Oh.
And I just thought, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to rush either." So, how do we not rush anymore? Because this is not life. So the microdosing inhibited the rush. There
Okay.
wasn't that need. It became very clear there's enough time and space to move in
Mhm.
a joyful way with intention and still get things accomplished.
Mhm.
So I remember early on in my microdosing walking down the street. I was walking to the bank from my business. And you know how some storefronts pipe music
Yeah.
out. And my favorite song came
Mm.
on. I have two, but this was one. I was going to say Robert Plant will be very upset that I'm not saying him right now. But
Oh,
uh,
okay.
Talking Heads Home, the song, is one that's just always been a very connecting song for me. And this shop that I walked by just happened to be piping it
Okay.
out. And because I was able to have a more connection in my day, which I believe was a result of microdosing, I just sat in the little eave of the shop and listened to the whole song and let it give me presence and let it fuel the rest of my day in a very specific way that I wanted. And so microdosing for me, it creates this immense amount of presence and intention to live a life that I want to on a daily basis.
I love that. Couple questions for you.
Mm,
When I get a lot of questions regarding microdosing, and do you feel that these benefits or effects of microdosing, obviously, I think while we're under, you know, the presence of the medicine in our system, it's one thing. Um, I believe that it stays with us. There's some
mm,
rollover into the next day if you're not going to. So I'd like to hear you talk about that, like,
mm.
being on literally having a microdose and feeling present, and then on days where you're not consuming psilocybin. And um, is that true? Do you think it
I
sticks
mean,
with you?
well, that's what I believe. I mean, and that's what I feel and believe. I mean, just from a simple biochemical um, it's hard pressed to believe it clears your system on that cellular
Yeah.
energetic level so quickly that there's no carryover. I do believe that. Now, if we look to James Fadman, the godfather, grandfather of microdosing, his protocol is 2 days on and then you take days off because he says, why waste it? You
Hmm.
don't need more. It's already there.
Oh, okay.
So I do believe that I agree with him in that. And as we're microdosing, I do think you are creating not just a neuronic shift, a neuron shift in your brain. You're creating an energetic shift.
Mm.
So is it physically there? I do believe it's physically there. Is it a placebo? Maybe, but who
Hmm.
cares? Because you're creating this change physically, chemically, and energetically for yourself. So no matter if it is or isn't, over time, the more you microdose, that's the goal, right? Is to live
Right.
in that space and that presence all the time.
Yes, I think we're on the same page there. So just kind of getting back to spirituality, I'd love to hear, and I'd like to share maybe a mystical experience I've
Oh,
had.
great.
Well, let's start. Yeah, so spirituality as it leads, or with macro settings or sessions. Let's go there. Do you
Okay.
have it? Yeah. Uh,
So, I this is a tricky one because there's so many shades here.
Mm,
So I'm a Western trained facilitator, and because I work within that Western trained facilitator license,
mhm,
typically I stay within the realms of a very therapeutic session. So someone comes in, and it's just very casual and comfortable.
mhm.
Now, I'm shamanically trained with the Michael Harner Institute, and I
Wow.
worked with Rosita Arvigo for spiritual bathing, and I've done
Mm,
all these other things, and I've been given several gifts. What I find, though, personally, is that I was never called to be a shaman or a kundera, or that's just not my lineage, and so
mhm.
therefore I don't burn sage, and I don't sing songs, and I don't drum my drum. Now I do that for myself personally,
Yeah.
um, but not for the participants that I work with. So it kind of stays. And quite honestly, sometimes I feel if you're in the right setting, so I'm sure set and setting is something you're familiar with, but if
Mhm,
you're in the right setting of you know, a true shaman or kunindera, that those songs and drums and music of all sorts, those are imperative to the journey. They're just as much as a healing, I believe, as the medicine itself.
mhm.
Um, but you can still heal and have a very profound experience in a Western setting as well, because it's the medicine and you that are
Mm,
doing the relationship work, the co-dynamic experience of what the medicine is offering you, and those can lead to profound spiritual experiences. So
yes.
you have the spiritual environment that can, have
Mhm.
a play, but you can also just have your profound spiritual experience with the medicine. So there's room for everything.
Got you. Yeah, I loved in the book you touched on the idea that many people in a macro session feel like they've connected with their ancestors.
Mhm.
That specifically speaks to me. I am pretty open with the listeners of the podcast. Again, my my experience was very I always use the word haphazard, but that's exactly what it was, and I decided to do a larger dose. I was with a small group of people, but, this was unlike any other experience I had had, and I felt as if I was connecting with my ancestors or grandparents,
Mhm.
specifically. And I mean, this was a huge catalyst for my work and this podcast and everything that I'm trying to do in this space, because it was my grandfather. I felt that we were consciously connected,
Mm.
was speaking to me and saying, Maggie, look at your life. You're healthier, you're a happier person, mother. You're here to share your story and help as many people as you possibly can. And I think with alcohol is a big theme of my podcast, because it was really my problems with alcohol. If
Mhm.
I didn't have them, I wouldn't be here. So I've had different guests, and when I speak to some, there's the idea that perhaps this is something I've manifested myself,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it is true. I mean, yeah, and I think in your book you point the other way, where that's. I just would love to hear your thoughts on kind of my little story there, and if you think I'm insane in the membrane or. um,
No, absolutely not. So, I'll refer back to like shaman, my shamanistic training. So, one of the things that you do early on is you practice what's called journeying. And
okay,
so, typically, someone will beat a drum at it's a pretty slow pace, and you can journey to the underworld or to the world above, but typically you do the underworld.
okay,
And and it can go on for 30 minutes or hours. And the rule, I hate to use the word rule in shaman medicine, but the rule is whatever you experience is real. You're not
Okay.
making up a story or manifesting, some concoction that whatever you want to say. So
Mhm.
it's the same, particularly, I believe, with psychedelic medicine. How can you concoct that? There's almost no way.
I
Your experience is about the most authentic experience you could ever have because you're not processing it from your cerebral cortex.
Right.
You're
Okay.
experiencing.
Mhm.
So no, I believe what one experiences is very
It is very special to hear that. I, because at the time, and shortly after my journey, I really could not believe what had happened. And
real.
all I knew it was um, just extremely profound to the point where, I mean, I'm still kind of reeling from this. and
Mhm.
it just felt so special to like the emotions that were I was feeling my heart was racing. I mean, I was vomiting gold and I was like connecting with my grandmother. I mean, not vomiting, but it felt like we were spewing just to see, it sounds a little crazy,
No, it
but
doesn't. It doesn't at all.
it is just again something that was so remarkable, profound, and magical that I can't help but not speak about it, and hope that anybody that's seeking sort of we can guide them safely and to experience something like that because it's definitely been I put it up there with one of the most important days of my life.
Mhm.
Um, so thank you for kind of your take on that. I appreciate
Sure.
it.
And just to expand on that, I'll share one experience that I had, which wasn't directly, ancestral lineage.
Mhm,
That's extremely, and I've had, patients and participants who connect with their ancestral lines and lineage, and it's just extremely healing and extremely profound, like you're describing.
mhm,
One of the last sessions that I did, I I had this experience, and I had heard about these experiences before, um, but they're just interesting. So I found myself in a village, which I could only describe as South American. There was, lots of forest, dense rainforest, and um, had brown skin, black hair, and
wow.
there was a big mountain, and what I experienced was the mountain erupting
Oh,
and basically lava coming and destroying literally everyone and everything
oh, wow.
that I knew. And I remember just rocking over and over and saying, the babies, all the babies are gone.
Oh my
Because,
god.
I was so like worried about the children. Now I have no relation to anyone in South America or Central America where I believe this took place, but
Mhm,
it's definitely, it's definitely a real experience. It's definitely something I witnessed and
mm,
and felt. So no matter what you experience, there
mhm,
is value and truth to it. And I encourage anyone who's listening, if you think you've had the most crazy thing and
mhm.
everyone's telling you that it's not real, I'm here to say I will listen and say I think
Aw. Oh,
it's
well, I appreciate that. I wanna did you with your experience with the volcano and the babies, did you find some meaning behind that, or were you able to maybe articulate to yourself what had still
no,
searching for
no,
that
it
one?
was more the potential recognition of, for me, a core value in this life, and I often speak in this way. So in this life as a human,
Sure.
um family and community are so ingrained to be a value of importance to me. But yet I've been born into a family and community that isn't super strong.
Mhm.
So it's this constant longing
Okay.
of like missing that uh, larger tribe or community, and so it was just a remembrance, I do believe, and
Gotcha.
that resurgence of loss and
Mm.
what that
Mhm.
what that's like.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for
Mhm.
sharing that. So, speaking of, I guess, community, you currently are in Portland, Oregon, right?
Mhm. Yep.
And as well as I know in your book, yeah, let's talk about the legalities in Portland because I think you guys are at the, what do we say, cream of the crop of the legalities with psychedelics. Yeah,
Or leading the pack, hopefully,
yes, leading the pack.
leading the
Yes.
pack. So in oh my gosh, now you're gonna make me go through my dates again.
Oh,
Anyway,
well, to the
uh,
best you can.
so Measure 109 passed in November a few years back,
Mhm.
which basically instituted the the first step to legalize psilocybin therapy in the state of Oregon.
Okay.
So that initiated a 2-year period. Was it 2 years? I believe it was 2-year period of development,
Okay.
so that all the rules could get fleshed out. A board was created. There were open meetings, so even those of us not on the board, we could go, we could sit in, we could listen to how things were shaking out, what was going to happen, which was very interesting and insightful as a facilitator in this arena. Um, what then happened was every county got to vote if they wanted to have a psilocybin services in their area. And
Oh, okay.
not every county did.
Mm, mhm.
Yamhill County is an example. Yeah, Yamhill's famous for all of our vineyards and wine here in Oregon.
Mm,
They that county, for whatever reason, decided to not allow psilocybin services in their county, and
okay.
that's fine.
Mhm.
So we have some counties that do and some counties that don't. Now,
Sure.
Portland is in Multnomah County, so it's the bigger urban area, and of course, it is allowed there. So we have three distinct sectors. You have growers of psilocybin that have to follow very specific rules. You have psilocybin centers where therapy takes place that have to follow very specific rules. And you have facilitators who have
Okay.
to, go to an accredited, approved school, pass exams, and receive licensure.
Mhm.
And then within the service center, you also have to have the psilocybin separate. So,
Okay.
for myself as a facilitator, I cannot go get the psilocybin and bring it to my patient or my
Mhm.
participant. They have to go to the counter, they have to purchase it, they have to bring it to the room. So,
Got
there's
you.
a lot of legal.
Are they, when the patients are obtaining their psilocybin, is that like the full fruit body or is it a concentrate or
Yes. So in Oregon, there was a big debate. Should we use synthetic? Should we
Mm,
use whole raw mushroom? And the organic regular mushroom won out. Everybody thinks that that's what should be used. So that is what is
okay.
available, and then each service center will work with different growers, and will have a menu of what type of psilocybin. They're all psilocybin cubensis, of course, but
Mm,
different varieties. So they can be
mhm.
albino, they can be golden teacher, so on and so forth. And then the facilitator usually helps to curate the dose based on the person, the experience that they're looking for. Are they on any SSRIs, which tend to require maybe a higher dose because of those
Mhm.
serotonin uptake inhibitors are blocked, so they need a little bit higher dose to have that cross that threshold. Um, So all of that takes place, and then if they want a booster dose, so sometimes, typically, what we do is we take a dose at the beginning, and then maybe an hour later, you
Mhm.
take the booster dose to carry you through. All of that has to be decided before the session
Oh,
begins.
okay.
The
Gotcha.
booster dose even has to be purchased before and is sitting there, because if the patient decides they want a booster dose after they've started, I cannot go get it. They cannot leave the room. So
Yeah, okay.
all of that has to be played out before.
Well, it's exciting to learn, as what's the word? It's very process driven, but overall, I think that, yeah, I hope you are leading the way and able to show other states and communities that you guys are doing things somewhat successfully over there. Do you have a good feeling? Are you still excited and hopeful?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the first thing I'll say is we have to give credit to all of the underground sitters that have been doing this
Hmm.
for so long in a safe manner. That
Sure.
is the crux of regulating anything, right? Getting the government involved. But there have been people doing this very safely and very successfully a long time.
Hmm.
So giving them their credit where credit is due. But I do believe the legalization opens up a world for people to uh, feel more comfortable and safe in this reprogramming, so to speak, of you know I'm in my 50s. I grew up with Dare and the war on drugs
Mm,
and all of this. There's people older than us, of course, that grew up with the terrible stereotyping of drugs and hippies and
mm.
Vietnam War. So we need to like remarket the message, so to speak, because a lot of
Yeah.
that was propaganda. Here we
Mhm.
are now. We have so many people suffering on all sorts of levels from mental health, whether it's addiction or straight up mental health diagnoses, uh,
Mm, mhm.
anorexia, bulimia, smoking cessation. Like there's just so many people that can benefit from this. And so Colorado has passed; they're on their
Mhm.
way, and now I'm just hoping further states move along.
Yes, here in Minneapolis, Mayor Fry, we have deprioritized. So
Mhm.
only in Minneapolis, deprioritization, of any offense. So I guess next step would be decrim for the state. But I feel excited to be here because I think that there is community involvement and engagement and excitement, especially in Minneapolis. And people are just curious about, learning more from this organic, magical medicine. Something this kind of leads me into my next question for you. In your book, and a common theme really um, around psychedelics is people are saying things like, I feel like I've had 10 years of therapy in one
Yeah.
single session.
Yeah.
And this kind of will lead into shadow work. I think you do a beautiful job in your book talking about shadow work. And I wanted you to just maybe touch on, what you believe shadow work to be and kind of your explanation behind it. And maybe leaning into that idea of years of therapy in one session and beyond talk therapy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, talk therapy definitely has its place. It's been a value of my life, but the problem for me personally with talk therapy is that I can talk myself into thinking I'm okay
Yeah,
when I'm
sure.
not.
I got you.
So, so with this, oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. But shadow work is it's a tricky concept to kind of understand, and of course when we first talk about shadow work, we really are reflecting more within shamanic medicine. So
Okay.
having dark energies, dark forces, uh, these types of entities affecting someone's mental health and needing to be extracted
Mhm.
to live a more fulfilled or healthier life. as an American or Western model, when we talk about shadow work, we're basically talking about all of those things that have happened to us that have led us to believe certain things about ourselves, which are not positive and not helping us live to our highest self
Mhm.
or our most authentic self. So it can be overt trauma, having that experience and then suppressing that experience and processing the rest of our life after that experience through the lens of trauma.
Mhm.
Um, it can be bullying as a child. It can be, unfortunately, uh, not best parenting practices
Mm.
affecting someone. It can be post traumatic stress. It can be a number of things. But
Sure.
what I kin it to is when we have these experiences and these thoughts and these processes, they're a part of who we are, but we don't want to see them
Mm.
anymore. And we don't want to look at them and we don't want to evaluate them for a number of reasons. So we take them and we shove them in the backpack on our back.
Mm. Yes.
And so they're getting shoved back there. We still have them. You can never set the backpack down. So they're always with you. But now we have all these holes in us, so to speak. And so we're not operating again with our fullest self.
Mhm.
And so the shadow work is kind of taking that backpack and opening it and taking a peek inside. And psilocybin or other psychedelic medicine can help you look in that backpack and not be as afraid potentially
Right.
and have
Mm.
more compassion and more
Mhm.
empathy for ourselves to look at those pieces and hold them with a little
Mhm.
more tenderness.
Yes, and you do such a beautiful job, kind of depicting your idea of shadow work. I think it's you made a little or what do we call it? A comic or
Yeah, a
it's such
little
a
video.
cute little yeah. So
So, mhm.
you have so much information. So we'll definitely be sure to call out a couple of, or your site and whatnot toward the end of this. But I find that your site is beautifully done and there's just so much information, especially in your book that you're calling out, please visit my site for this and this. So it's you've become a huge resource for me if you believe it or not. Um, I wanted to just touch base on one last thing. I think seeing that you are an herbalist, correct?
Yep.
Are there any herbs or tinctures, or is there anything that you can talk about when it comes to using psilocybin? I know with microdosing, we've talked a few times on this show with stacking. I'm not really looking for that. I want to know if there's any like specific herbs or things that you feel enhance, or maybe we can speak to the anxiety that might come around with taking a session or a journey. Talk to me about that if you can.
Sure. So, there can be a lot of anxiety
Mm.
prior. I mean, I akin it to having a baby.
Uh,
So when you're pregnant and you know this baby has to come out, you have no idea
mhm.
what the actual process is going to be. You think you do, you run through your plan, you talk to whoever about the process. Same thing with the psilocybin session. But there's no way to know. And we as humans don't like that. we want
Right.
we want to know about the unknown. So when I am starting to work with a new participant, I use the word participant because not everybody's a patient.
Sure.
They're
Mhm.
just an agreed upon willing participant for a psilocybin session. We do pre-sessions. So I'll do 2 to 4 pre-sessions
Mhm.
beforehand to gauge that person where they're at, what their goals and intentions are, talk about set and setting, do all of these things because it's important to be prepared as
Mm.
well as to create some level of trust. It's a big ask, for people to trust that I got you. You're going to be fine and I've got you. I
Mhm.
want to have that. If someone is experiencing profound anxiety, but they're really wanting to move forward, then I'll recommend doing a tincture of passion flower, skullcap, and oat straw.
Mm,
So this little combo just really calms the mind, works on the central nervous system, and gives them a little more resilience that when those feelings come up, they can calm them down.
mm,
And so that's typically what I'll recommend and do for them.
love it. And I love in your book, I believe it was Fadiman who you kind of touch on the plant medicine intelligence or consciousness of plant medicine. And, the more I am learning and, spending time in this space, I couldn't believe more. I had a wonderful weekend experimenting with Wachuma,
Hmm.
San Pedro, um, a time long ago.
Yeah.
Uh, but, it's just, um, yeah, that one for me was really vocal, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Uh, um, yeah, so how fantastic for you with just incredible knowledge, between the plant medicine and the Western model and ancient history or wisdom behind the medicine. You are so fabulous.
Oh, thank you. It's a lifelong journey of interest.
It's sure a never-ending conversation, that's what I
Yes.
say.
Absolutely.
I guess I wanted to ask you one last question, if you wouldn't mind sharing. I personally am curious, when it comes to sitting in ceremony for yourself, or yeah, I'd like to know more about when you yourself feel called to have a session, and what does that look like? Do yeah, can you
Sure.
I'd love to hear
Sure.
more.
I mean, at this point, it's pretty apparent. um, as a facilitator, you have got to do your own work. I mean,
Mm,
it's just so important. Not only so that you can have dynamic and provoking and helpful conversations with the people that you work with, but
mhm,
you've got to clear your own stuff out of the way so that when you are in your session, it is unwavering devotion and compassion for whoever it is you're working for. You can't let your own stuff shade that experience. And all sorts of stuff comes up in
mm,
a session, right? You just never know. And so having the ability to be clear within my own vessel allows me just to hold that space without judgment or need to explain or anything, just holding space. So it becomes pretty apparent by little signs for me. It can be dreams. I can have dreams that's just like, what are you doing? Let's
Yeah,
go. You need to like tap back in here.
mhm,
No matter what, if it's been longer than 4 months, I will have a healing session for myself just because on a macro level, just to keep that channel open. And
mhm.
I find that each time, it's there are some congruent consistencies, but sometimes I'll get a really left wing nut and just be like, "Well, I didn't even know that that was happening for me,"
Yeah,
and so it allows for me to constantly stay connected with the medicine, which I think is really important.
mm,
So there is some continuity within, planning, but sometimes it's just like something's coming up. I can feel exactly where it is in my
yep,
in my
mhm,
body, and it's like, okay, I need to take a look at this. And that's sometimes the medicine is very specific just for that. I mean, there's other ways to deal with things, which of course, again, I have that toolbox to
mhm,
draw from, but sometimes you just need the medicine to help figure out
yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah, I like to think at the very baseline of having a microdose, for example, it's just almost like just feeling like this hug or support or held by the universe. And I think just that little notion or inkling is just so beautiful. And to know that you can kind of, I guess, count on it in such a small way, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think overall, just this idea, I many people, for valid reasons, feel so much fear about, you know, opening up and being ready to explore and dig and peel the layers back. But I think one thing that I have learned is exactly that the medicine provides this safe safe feeling or safe way to safe, I guess, feeling a little bit more safe about doing that, which was something that took me some time to kind of realize. So I'm glad that I have that understanding
Yeah,
now. But yeah, I appreciate you sharing kind of some of the self work that you do, and yeah, I agree so much with you being a facilitator. Like, obviously, it's a never ending space for yourself to be able to look into and heal. And I'm sure you're learning all the time from your participants as well.
definitely, definitely. And it's just interesting, there are no coincidences, right?
Yes, that is a common theme through all of this for me as well. Well, JJ, this has been so excellent. Let's let our listeners know. I just wanted to remind everybody the name of the book is Psilocybin Therapy. Do you know the best way for people to get a copy?
Yeah, Amazon. I mean, I don't like promoting them, but yeah, you can just I have an author page. All of my books are there.
Okay, great.
'Cause the herbal books and this book, and that's just the easiest way. And of course, reviews do help in this
Oh,
silly algorithm world of ours. So if you do like it, I would love to hear about it.
oh, well, I loved it, and I would love to leave a review. And then is your website drjjpurcell.com?
That's it.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
Yeah. Yeah, you can head over there. You can see that little shadow work video, and there's
Yes.
lots of free content on
Mm,
that and on YouTube about herbal medicine making and all sorts of stuff. And there's a free ebook on the website.
there
That
really
is
is
created,
so
but
much, yeah, content and support there, so it's great. Did you have anything for me? Anything else you wanna help promote
no,
or
no, this has been such a joy. I loved talking with you. It was really fun.
Oh, well, I am very excited to get this one out there to the people because, yeah, you are, in my mind, just a fabulous superwoman.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Alrighty, well, I would love to keep in contact and, touch base as things hopefully progress.
Yeah,
But anyway, thank you again. Enjoyed having you so much,
okay.
and you take care.
Thanks. Bye.
For more information, please visit mindsonmushrooms.com. Thank you for joining the journey.